George was putting his old, battered toy, a plush dinosaur named Rex, to bed. Its glass eyes glowed dimly in the darkness. Moonlight fell on the shelf where Rex stood. Its shadow on the wall was disproportionately large and menacing, with an enormous open mouth. The shadow on the wall moved. It turned its head toward George's bed, while the toy itself remained still. Its glass eyes were completely black without any shine. In their depths reflected a gaunt, bony figure leaning over the bed. Thick black liquid resembling oil seeped from the seams on the dinosaur's belly. It dripped onto the floor, forming an oily puddle. The puddle began to pulse. From it slowly rose thin, bony tentacles resembling vertebrae, reaching toward the bedpost. Terrified, George grabbed the dinosaur and ran out of the room. The black tentacles from the puddle crawled after him, leaving oily trails on the floor. In the long corridor, the nightlight flickered. On the walls hung children's drawings of dinosaurs. In all the drawings, the bodies of dinosaurs were crossed out with thick black lines, and their jaws were depicted unnaturally large and full of sharp teeth. George's own shadow on the wall changed. Its head elongated, its back hunched, and its fingers turned into long, clawed paws. The shadow raised a clawed paw and sharply pointed at his parents' bedroom door. George froze in terror. The black liquid from the dinosaur now dripped continuously. The drops on the floor did not spread but gathered into small, pulsating black clumps. The door to his parents' bedroom was closed. From underneath it crawled similar bony black tentacles that slowly curled into a dense ball. George recoiled and ran into the living room. His distorted shadow on the corridor wall did not move from its place. It only turned its head and watched him with empty eye sockets. Chaos reigned in the living room. All soft toys were scattered around, and their shadows on the walls froze in aggressive attacking poses. In the reflection of the black TV screen, George saw his own shadow standing right behind him, its clawed paw raised for a strike. The shadow turned around. Its face was long and noseless, and its mouth, full of spikes, opened in a silent scream. Black tar dripped from its maw. George turned around again. There was no real shadow behind him now. But all the walls of the living room were covered with moving, twisting black patterns, like living fossils or petrified creatures alive again. Suddenly, Rex, the plush dinosaur in his hands, twitched violently. Its seams split open, spilling a stream of black liquid. Sharp, bone-like spikes appeared from inside its interior. The room was empty now. Torn fabric lay on the floor, dotted with tiny bone fragments. All walls, ceiling, and floor were covered with hardened black fossils resembling lava, forming a single skeleton of a giant lizard creature. The entrance to the corridor was completely blocked by a wall of petrified resin. The family was walking along an empty shoreline. Peppa and George were collecting shells. The white beam of the lighthouse slid across the shore. It suddenly turned bright red. The beam fell onto the sand a meter away from George. The spot of sand under the beam instantly blackened. A vortex formed. The sand hissed as it was drawn downward. Tentacles burst out of the vortex. They resembled crystals but were flexible and sticky. The tentacles reached toward George. One wrapped around his ankle. George screamed. He tried to pull his leg away. The lighthouse began to blink chaotically. The beam holding George grew brighter. George stopped resisting. His eyes became glazed over. He walked toward the vortex with mechanical steps. Dad and Mom rushed toward George. Their movements suddenly slowed down. The skin on their faces started to lose color, turning gray. Peppa ran after them, shouting. The red lighthouse beam found Dad and Mom. It trembled over them. The vortex expanded. Black tentacles stretched toward new victims. Peppa overtook her parents, rushing toward the lighthouse staircase. She had to stop the light. The red beam slid after her, striking the nearby cliff. Peppa burst into the round room at the top. A giant lens of the lighthouse occupied one wall. In the center stood a control panel with an old handle. In the corner, blending with shadows, sat the keeper. His face was hidden beneath a hood. The keeper muttered softly. His voice was hoarse like the sound of surf in a shell. Peppa ran up to the control panel. Suddenly, the keeper lifted his head sharply. Shadows in the room thickened around him. "Don't turn off the light." Peppa pulled on the handle with all her might. The keeper lunged at her. Shadows behind him stretched out like tentacles. The blood-red lighthouse beam went out. Darkness reigned for a moment. Then the beam flared back to life, blindingly black. Not light, but absence of light ripping through the night from the lens. Peppa ran out onto a narrow balcony surrounding the room. The black beam struck down at the shore below. She looked down. On the beach, in the center of the black beam, stood Dad, Mom, and George, their figures faintly glowing with a dull gray light. A huge black vortex pulsed on the sand beneath them. Black tentacles burst from the vortex. They wrapped around Dad's, Mom's, and George's legs, pulling downward. Suddenly, the lighthouse's red beam jerked sharply, aiming directly at Peppa on the balcony above her. Shadows on the balcony thickened. They stretched out from corners toward Peppa. Every house has things better left untouched. But sometimes they touch you first. Peppa walked, clutching the rabbit tightly. At the end of the hallway, a closed, dark door. A black puddle seeped from underneath it. Bare footprints led inside. It was waiting, remembering every step. Peppa stood on the threshold. Deep inside loomed a tall figure, the master, with two glowing eyes. This was the room of forgotten things, and he was its keeper. Peppa ran, stumbling. Black tendrils grabbed her ankle. "Run!" But the house had already decided her fate. The rabbit lay on the floor, its mouth ripped open. "We played with your friend. Now it's your turn." The master stood behind Peppa, his steam-like tendrils coiling around her neck. Black vapor poured from her snout, revealing a face within. "Stay. Forever." Peppa hid behind a bush. From the shadows, branch-like tentacles reached out. The garden remembers everyone who played here, and everyone who stayed. Peppa's dress lies empty. Beside it, a crown. Only the shell remains. On the swing sits a Peppa doll, a plastic smile, black bead eyes. A new toy for the collection. Black strings stretch from her head and hands toward the house. The strings are taut. The stage is set. On the window, a bloody message. "Enter your move. Play with us." Sunny day. Daddy Pig was filming his family with a new wide-angle phone. He looked at the screen. At the very edge of the frame, a tall, dark figure was visible. Daddy showed Peppa the photo. The picture was normal, but at the edge, there was a sharp, blurry spot with a couple of bright red dots. He looked at the screen again. The entire screen was filled with a huge, distorted face. Pale, rubbery skin, a huge mouth with tiny, sharp teeth, red eyes. Daddy, horrified, dropped the phone. On the shattered screen appeared the same creepy face, laughing. Black, oily liquid was flowing from the screen. The family froze, looking toward the forest. A tall figure. Very thin, long limbs like a spider's, an oversized head with red eyes and a wide grin. Black liquid dripped from its hands onto the grass. The family ran home. The figure took its first step. A black puddle from the broken phone began to grow rapidly. Daddy slammed the front door shut. Peppa and George pressed against Daddy. The terrifying face of the monster was in the window. Black liquid that Daddy accidentally stepped in quickly spread across the living room floor. It contained bubbles and shadows as if something alive was inside. Daddy pulled the children toward the basement stairs. Black liquid had already covered half of the floor. George tripped. Daddy caught him. From the stairs, black liquid was flowing down. It's dark. Only light from the open door upstairs illuminated part of the basement. The family looked upward. From the darkness of the basement came an amorphous shape made of black liquid with a dozen red eyes. This is the core of the monster forming from the liquid. The family pressed against the far wall of the basement. The liquid monster and spider figure cornered them. The door upstairs slammed shut with a bang. Absolute horror and awareness of impending doom. Black liquid already surrounded their feet. The monsters nearly loomed over them. Light from under the door flickered out. From beneath the door, thick black smoke slowly crawled out. In the smoke, two red eyes flashed for a moment and then went out.